The council chamber floated in the void of space, a massive structure built around a dying star. Inside, representatives from 40 different species sat in their designated sections, each one looking down at the small human delegation standing in the center of the floor. Ambassador Jisoo stood with her hands clasped behind her back, refusing to show any sign of nervousness even though every alien eye in the room was fixed on her. The Vrathan commander towered over the speaking platform, his scaled skin gleaming under the artificial lights. Vexthor had ruled 17 star systems through military conquest, and everyone in the council knew it. His voice boomed through the chamber like thunder. The mineral rights to Colony World XR-447 belong to the Vrathan Collective by historical precedent. Your species arrived in this sector mere decades ago. We have owned these territories for centuries. Jisoo stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. Historical precedent. Your empire owned a system 3 light years away, 200 years ago. You never set foot on our colony. Humans have lived there for 12 years. We've built cities, farms, and schools. Those are our children playing in those streets. A ripple of whispers spread through the council. Some species seemed amused by the humans' boldness. Others looked uncomfortable, knowing what was coming next. Vexthor's expression twisted into something between a smile and a snarl. Children? On a world that should be ours? Perhaps we should discuss this matter differently. He turned to address the full council. I invoke the right of challenge, as outlined in Council Law, Article 73. A military engagement to settle this territorial dispute, with the victor claiming full rights to the contested world. The chamber fell silent. The right of challenge was ancient, rarely used, and absolutely binding. Once invoked and accepted, there was no backing down. The entire galaxy would watch, and the loser would surrender all claims. Captain Day 1, standing just behind Jisoo, leaned forward and whispered, Ambassador, we should request time to consult with Earth Command. Jisoo didn't turn around. Her eyes stayed locked on Vexthor. Every diplomat in the room expected her to ask for a recess, to seek guidance, to find some way to avoid this catastrophic challenge. The Vrathan had thousands of warships. Humanity had barely 20 vessels that could be called a proper fleet. Instead, she smiled. On behalf of Earth and all human territories, I accept your challenge, High Commander Vexthor. The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages, their translation devices struggling to keep up. The council chairman, an ancient creature that looked like a floating jellyfish, had to activate the silence field 3 times before order returned. Vexthor looked surprised for just a moment, then threw his head back and laughed. Excellent. I was afraid you would scurry away like the primitive creatures you are. Let it be recorded that humanity has accepted the Vrathan challenge. Let it also be recorded, Jisoo said loudly, that the Vrathan initiated this conflict over a world they've never touched, against a species they know nothing about. Oh, we know enough, Vexthor said, his amusement clear. We know you have 20 warships. We know your weapons technology is at least 50 years behind the galactic standard. We know you've been part of this council for only 30 years. He leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the human delegation. Tell me, Ambassador, how many wars has humanity won against technologically superior opponents? Jisoo's smile never wavered. All of them. That got Vexthor's attention. His eyes narrowed. Impossible. Humanity spent 10,000 years fighting itself before we reached the stars, Jisoo continued. We fought with sticks and stones. Then, bronze and iron. Then, gunpowder and nuclear weapons. We fought in deserts, jungles, frozen wastelands, and the vacuum of space around our own moon. Every single time, someone had better weapons, better armor, better numbers. And, every single time, someone found a way to win anyway. She took a step closer to the platform, looking up at the towering alien commander. "You want to know what we learned, High Commander?" "We learned that the side with the biggest guns doesn't always win. We learned that desperation makes you creative. We learned that there's no such thing as a fair fight when your children's lives are on the line." The chamber had gone quiet again. Several council members leaned forward in their seats, suddenly, very interested in this conversation. Vextor's confidence seemed to waver for just a second, then, returned in full force. "Brave words from a species about to be destroyed. Very well, human. I will give you 1 week to prepare your pathetic fleet. We will meet in the Scourge Belt, the asteroid field near your colony. Neutral territory, witnessed by council observers." "1 week is generous," Jisoo said. "We'll be ready in 3 days." More whispers spread through the council. The human was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Possibly both. As the session ended and the various delegations began to file out, Captain Day One finally managed to pull Jisoo aside in a private corridor. His face was pale but controlled. "Ambassador, with all respect, have you lost your mind? 20 ships against the Vrathan fleet. They'll send at least 500 vessels, maybe more. We'll be obliterated in the first hour." Jisoo pulled out her communication device and started sending encrypted messages back to Earth. "They'll send exactly 500 ships, Captain. Vextor is arrogant but not stupid. He'll use overwhelming force, but he won't commit his entire fleet to what he sees as a minor police action. 500 is still 25 times our number." "Yes," Jisoo agreed, her fingers moving rapidly across the device. "Which is exactly what Admiral Sujin predicted. The War Planning Committee has been modeling this scenario for 2 years, ever since the Vrathan started making noises about our colony. We knew they'd eventually challenge us." Day One stared at her. "You wanted this to happen." "Want is a strong word," Jisoo said. "But, we knew it was inevitable. Better to face them now, on our terms, in a location we've had time to study, than to have them show up at Earth one day demanding surrender." She looked up at him, her expression serious. "Captain, get your ship ready to move. You're heading back to the colony immediately. You need to coordinate with Admiral Sujin's fleet." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to stay here and make sure the council observers are positioned exactly where we want them." Jisoo allowed herself a small, dangerous smile. "And, I'm going to place a very large bet on humanity winning this fight. The odds are 10,000 to 1 against us. When we win, that's going to fund a lot of new schools on our colony." Day One shook his head in disbelief, but he was already moving toward the docking bay. Behind them, through the transparent walls of the corridor, they could see the council chamber emptying out. Alien diplomats were already sending messages to their homeworlds, spreading the news of humanity's suicidal acceptance of the Vrathan challenge. In a bar frequented by various species military officers, a Kaleshire trader was already taking bets. Within an hour, every major species in the galaxy knew about the challenge. Within 3 hours, the betting pools had reached astronomical numbers. Everyone agreed on one thing: humanity was about to be taught a very harsh lesson about challenging their betters. The Vrathan were one of the 3 most powerful military forces in known space. Humans were newcomers who barely understood how galactic politics worked. It would be a massacre. What none of them knew, what none of them could have known, was that humanity had been preparing for this exact type of fight since before they'd invented the wheel. And, they were very, very good at it. The command center on Moon Base Sejong looked like controlled chaos. Dozens of officers moved between holographic displays showing star maps, ship positions, and endless streams of data. At the center of it all stood Admiral Sujin, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, her eyes scanning 3 different screens at once. Captain Day One's face appeared on the main communication screen, transmitted from his ship as it raced toward the Scourge Belt. "Admiral, I've reviewed the preliminary battle plans. This is insane." "Your opinion is noted, Captain," Su-Jin replied without looking up from her tactical display. "Now tell me something useful. How long until you reach the rendezvous point?" 18 hours at maximum speed." "But, Admiral, the crew is asking questions. They want to know how we're supposed to fight 500 Vrathan warships with 20 vessels." Su-Jin finally looked directly at the screen. "You tell them the truth, Captain. We're not going to fight 500 warships. We're going to slaughter them." The confidence in her voice made Day One pause. "Explain." "The Vrathan fight like every other major military power in the galaxy. They rely on superior numbers, better shields, and bigger guns. They line up in formation, pound the enemy until their shields fail, then finish them with concentrated fire. It's efficient, proven, and completely predictable." Su-Jin pulled up a new screen showing historical battle data. "I've analyzed every Vrathan engagement for the past 90 years. They haven't changed their tactics once. Not once, Captain. Do you know why?" "Because it works," Day One said quietly. "Exactly. It works against every other species because every other species fights the same way. They all signed the Galactic Warfare Conventions. They all agreed on what weapons are acceptable, what tactics are honorable, what constitutes a fair engagement." Su-Jin's smile was cold. Humanity never signed those conventions. Across the base, Dr. Youngmi was presenting her latest designs to a room full of engineers who looked increasingly uncomfortable. The weapons researcher had a reputation for creating things that made people nervous, and today's presentation was living up to that reputation. "The Vrathan shields are designed to deflect energy weapons and absorb kinetic impacts from standard projectiles," she explained, pointing at the holographic model of a Vrathan warship. "But they're not designed for this." The hologram shifted to show a massive asteroid, cut open to reveal its hollow interior packed with human-made fusion devices. The engineers stared at it in silence. One of them finally raised his hand. "Dr. Youngmi, that's not a mine. That's a planet killer." "No, a planet killer would be much larger," she replied cheerfully. "This will only destroy everything within a 2-kilometer radius. We've modified 37 asteroids in the Scourge Belt with these devices. When the Vrathan fleet arrives, they'll think they're navigating through a normal asteroid field. This violates about 15 different galactic conventions on acceptable warfare," another engineer said. Youngmi shrugged. "Only if you signed them. We didn't. And, before anyone asks, yes, I've triple-checked the calculations. Yes, the detonation timing is precise. And, yes, I understand this is terrifying." "Good. It should be." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Taeyong was briefing his stealth fighter squadron in a hangar bay that had been sealed off from the rest of the base. His pilots were the youngest in the fleet, but they'd been training for this specific mission for 6 months. "The Vrathan have never fought against stealth fighters," Taeyong explained, pacing in front of the assembled pilots. "Their sensors are designed to track large vessels, not individual craft the size of ours. We'll be hiding in the asteroid debris, powered down, invisible to their systems." A young pilot named Quan raised her hand. "Sir, what happens when they do detect us?" "Then, we're already behind them, targeting their engine cores," Taeyong replied. "We hit fast, we hit hard, and we disappear before they can respond. The key is discipline. No heroes, no unnecessary risks. We work as a team, or we die as individuals." Back in the command center, Admiral Su-Jin was in a secure video conference with the leaders of 7 other species. Their faces appeared on separate screens, each one looking worried. The Kalesh representative spoke first. "Admiral, you're asking us to risk open rebellion against the Vrathan. If your plan fails, they'll turn their full attention to crushing us. Your people are already being crushed, Sujin replied bluntly. The Vrathan take 70% of your resources, station troops in your cities, and treat your species like servants. How is that different from being destroyed? We're still alive, the Kalesh said quietly. Are you? Sujin leaned forward. I'm offering you a chance to be free. When the Vrathan commit their fleet to attacking humanity, their occupied territories will be vulnerable. We've analyzed their garrison deployments. They keep minimal forces on conquered worlds because they've never faced coordinated uprisings before. A representative from the Ton species, a bird-like alien, clicked its beak nervously. And if the Vrathan defeat you quickly? If they finish humanity in a day and turn back to face us? They won't finish us in a day, Sujin said with absolute certainty. They won't finish us at all. But, you need to trust me. You need to wait for our signal, and, when it comes, you need to strike hard and fast at every Vrathan facility in your systems. The 7 species exchanged glances across their screens. Finally, the Kalesh representative nodded slowly. We will prepare. But, Admiral, if this fails, you'll have condemned not just humanity but 7 other species to annihilation. I know, Sujin said simply. I don't intend to fail. After the conference ended, Tactical Officer Hyunwoo approached the Admiral with his final analysis. He looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days, which was probably accurate. Admiral, I've run the simulations 400 times. Even with all our preparations, we're going to take heavy casualties. Best case scenario, we lose 8 ships. Worst case, we lose 16. And, in every scenario, we win? Sujin asked. In 87% of simulations, yes. But, Admiral, that's assuming everything goes perfectly. If the Vrathan change their approach, if they bring more ships than expected, if our timing is off by even 30 seconds, then, we adapt, Sujin interrupted. Hyunwoo, do you know what the difference is between us and every other species in this galaxy? He shook his head. They plan for victory. We plan for survival. Every human who ever lived came from a species that nearly went extinct a dozen times before we invented agriculture. We survived ice ages, plagues, famines, and wars that killed billions. We didn't survive because we were stronger or smarter. We survived because we refused to give up, and because we learned to fight dirty when we had to. Sujin pulled up the tactical display of the Scourge Belt, showing the positions where human ships would be waiting. The Vrathan expect a fair fight because that's all they've ever known. They're about to learn that humanity doesn't believe in fair fights. We believe in winning. As the final preparations continued, Captain Daewon's ship arrived at the Scourge Belt. His crew immediately began coordinating with the other 19 human vessels. They practiced their hit-and-run maneuvers, tested their sensor spoofing equipment, and reviewed the precise timing required for the plan to work. In the medical bay, the ship's doctor was preparing for casualties. In the engine room, technicians were overcharging the power cores beyond recommended safety limits. In the weapons bay, every missile was being armed and every targeting system was being calibrated to perfection. Throughout the fleet, the same scene played out. Humans preparing for a battle they couldn't afford to lose. On the 3rd day, long-range sensors detected the Vrathan fleet approaching. 512 warships, exactly as predicted. They moved in perfect formation, confident and unstoppable. Admiral Sujin watched the sensor data come in, her expression calm. She opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Sujin. In approximately 6 hours, the Vrathan fleet will arrive at the Scourge Belt. They believe this will be an easy victory. They believe we're primitive, weak, and unprepared. Let's show them what humanity learned during 10,000 years of warfare. Let's show them why you never, ever challenged the species that invented the concept of total war. All stations, begin final preparations. And, remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every species that's ever been bullied by empires like the Vrathan. Make them count. Across the fleet, crews responded with acknowledgement. There was no cheering, no bravado. Just quiet determination and deadly focus. The trap was set. Now they just had to wait for the Vrathan to walk into it. The Scourge Belt looked like any other asteroid field scattered across the galaxy. Chunks of rock and ice drifted in the darkness, ranging from pebbles to mountains. Radiation from a nearby pulsar made sensor readings difficult, which was exactly why the Vrathan had chosen this location. They wanted the Council observers to have a clear view of humanity's defeat. High Commander Vexthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unbreakable Will, and surveyed the tactical display. 512 warships under his command, all in perfect formation. Each vessel was 3 times the size of the largest human ship, with shields that could withstand sustained bombardment and weapons that could crack a moon. "Sir, we're detecting the human fleet," his sensor officer reported. 20 vessels, exactly as expected. They're holding position near the inner belt, clustered together. Vexthor nodded. Predictable. They're trying to use the asteroids as cover. It won't help them. He turned to his tactical officer. "Initiate standard envelopment pattern. I want them surrounded within 30 minutes. No escape routes." The Vrathan fleet began to move, spreading out in a coordinated pattern that had won hundreds of battles. They'd done this so many times that it was almost routine. Surround the enemy, concentrate fire until their shields collapsed, then eliminate the survivors. Simple, efficient, and absolutely certain. Captain Day 1 watched the Vrathan ships on his own display, his hands gripping the armrests of his command chair. They're doing exactly what Admiral Sujin predicted. Textbook formation, no variation. Tactical Officer Hyun-woo's voice was tense but controlled. Wraither forward elements will reach firing range in 12 minutes. The envelopment will be complete in 28 minutes. Hold position, Day 1 ordered. Don't power up weapon systems yet. Let them think we're scared. Throughout the human fleet, crews waited in disciplined silence. Every captain had their orders. Every system was ready. And, hidden throughout the asteroid field, 37 modified asteroids waited with their deadly cargo. On Moon Base Sejong, Dr. Youngmi monitored the detonation network from her control station. Each asteroid was equipped with sensors tracking the Vrathan positions. The timing had to be perfect. "Vrathan forward line is passing Marker 7, she reported calmly. Marker 9. Marker 12. Admiral Sujin watched the same display, her face expressionless. Wait for it. The Vrathan fleet continued its advance, completely unaware that they were sailing into a killing field. Marker 17, Youngmi said. They're fully committed now. All ships are inside the blast perimeter. Activate Phase 1, Sujin ordered. Deep inside a dozen asteroids scattered throughout the belt, timers reached 0. The explosions weren't nuclear fusion detonations, not yet. These were carefully calculated fragmentation charges designed to turn each asteroid into a cloud of high-velocity shrapnel. The first wave hit the Vrathan forward sensor arrays. Thousands of rock fragments, each one accelerated to devastating speeds, slammed into the delicate sensor equipment mounted on the hulls of the leading ships. The shields absorbed most of the impacts, but sensors were external equipment, exposed and vulnerable. Vexthor's displays suddenly went dark as the Unbreakable Will's forward sensors were shredded. What happened? Report. Sir, we're experiencing massive sensor disruption. Multiple impacts from asteroid debris. 47 ships have lost primary sensor arrays. Switch to secondary systems, Vexthor snapped. And return fire at those asteroids. Sir, Which asteroids? The entire field is showing active movement. Before Vexthor could respond, the second wave detonated. This time, the explosions targeted the command ship's communication relays. More fragmentation clouds, more precisely aimed destruction. The Unbreakable will shuddered as impacts hammered its hull. Communications offline. We've lost fleet coordination. Vexthor slammed his fist on the armrest. This is impossible. Asteroids don't explode with tactical precision. But, they did, when humans prepared them. The third wave was pure psychological warfare. Massive explosions erupted throughout the belt, creating blinding flashes and electromagnetic pulses that scrambled what few sensors the Vrathan had left. The explosions had no physical targets, they were just there to create chaos and confusion. Lieutenant Taeyong's voice crackled over the fighter squadron's encrypted channel. All wings, this is your moment. Power up and engage. Hidden among the tumbling asteroids, 60 stealth fighters came to life. They'd been floating dark and cold for hours, indistinguishable from debris. Now they lit up their engines and dove toward the Vrathan fleet. The fighters were tiny compared to the massive warships, and the Vrathan's disrupted sensors couldn't track them effectively. Taeyong led his wing directly at a Vrathan destroyer, waiting until the last possible second before firing a spread of armor-piercing missiles at its engine core. The missiles punched through the destroyer's shields, which were calibrated to stop large projectiles, not small, fast ones. Explosions rippled across the engine section. The destroyer began to list, its power failing. Target destroyed, breaking off, Taeyong reported, already diving back into the asteroid field before the Vrathan could respond. All across the battlefield, the same scene repeated. Human fighters darted in, struck vital systems, and vanished. The Vrathan tried to target them, but their massive weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat, not for hitting small, agile craft. Then, Dr. Youngmi activated her masterpiece. The EMP network, a web of microsatellites humanity had been secretly deploying in the Scourge Belt for the past 3 months, came online. The electromagnetic pulse cascaded through the Vrathan formation, targeted and focused. 153 Vrathan ships went dark. Their shields flickered and died. Their weapons powered down. Their life support switched to emergency backup. The ships became drifting hulks, completely vulnerable. Now! Captain Day 1 shouted. All ships, attack pattern Delta. The 20 human warships broke from their defensive position and scattered in different directions. They didn't charge the Vrathan formation. Instead, they began hit-and-run strikes, firing from unexpected angles and immediately repositioning. The Defiant Hope unleashed a barrage of missiles at a disabled Vrathan cruiser, then dove behind a massive asteroid before the nearby ships could return fire. The cruiser, unable to raise shields or maneuver, took the full impact. Its hull ruptured, venting atmosphere and debris. Vexthor's bridge had descended into pandemonium. Officers were shouting conflicting reports, systems were failing, and the tactical display showed nothing but chaos. Sir, we've lost 153 ships to the electromagnetic pulse. Communications are fragmented. We can't coordinate a response. Then, fire at everything. Vexthor roared. Destroy every asteroid, every rock, every piece of debris in this cursed belt. It was exactly the wrong order, and exactly what the humans had anticipated. The Vrathan ships began firing indiscriminately into the asteroid field. They destroyed hundreds of asteroids, creating even more debris and chaos. They also destroyed 12 of their own ships that had been disabled by the EMP, and damaged another 30 in friendly fire incidents. The battle that was supposed to last 4 hours turned into a 16-hour nightmare. The Vrathan, disorganized and desperate, kept trying to reform their lines. The humans kept hitting them from unexpected directions, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. When the Vrathan tried to retreat, they found that human ships had maneuvered behind them, cutting off escape routes. When they tried to concentrate their fire, the humans scattered. When they tried to defend their damaged vessels, human fighters struck somewhere else. Admiral Su Jin watched the battle unfold from Moon Base Sejong, making minute adjustments to the fleet's coordination. Captain Day 1, pull back Wing 3, they're getting too close to that Vrathan battle group. Lieutenant Taeyang, there's a cluster of disabled ships at coordinate 77 Alpha, finish them. Throughout it all, she remained calm, treating the battle like a complex chess game. Because that's what it was. The Vrathan had better pieces, but humanity knew how to use them better. Finally, after 16 hours of relentless combat, Vex Thor made the call every commander dreads. All ships, retreat. Full emergency withdrawal. The surviving Vrathan vessels turned and fled, leaving behind 127 destroyed warships and thousands of dead crew members. Their perfect formation was broken, their confidence shattered, their reputation destroyed. The human fleet had lost exactly 2 ships, with another 5 damaged but operational. As the Vrathan disappeared into faster-than-light travel, Captain Day 1 slumped in his chair, exhausted. Around him, his crew was cheering, crying, and hugging each other. They'd survived. They'd won. Hyun-woo turned to Day 1 with a tired smile. "Sir, I think we just made history." "No," Day 1 replied, watching the debris field that had once been the pride of the Vrathan fleet. "We just reminded the galaxy of something they'd forgotten. Never start a fight with someone who's been fighting their whole existence." The council observers, who had watched the entire battle from their safe positions, transmitted their recordings across the galaxy. Within hours, every species in known space had seen what happened when you challenged humanity to a fair fight. The problem for the Vrathan was simple. Humanity didn't believe in fair fights. They believed in winning. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened less than 24 hours after the battle. The chamber that had been filled with mockery and amusement just days ago now held a very different atmosphere. Tense. Uncertain. And, more than a little afraid. Ambassador Jisoo stood in the same spot where she'd accepted Vex Thor's challenge, but this time she wasn't looking up at anyone. The representatives who had looked down on humanity were now leaning forward in their seats, paying very close attention to every word she said. Vex Thor stood at the speaking platform, his scaled face twisted in fury. His armor was scorched from the battle, and he'd refused to change it. He wanted everyone to see what humanity had done to him. The humans violated every principle of civilized warfare, he shouted. They used deception, ambush tactics, and weapons specifically designed to cause maximum devastation. They turned asteroids into bombs. They attacked ships that had lost their ability to fight back. This is not how honorable species conduct military engagements. The Galactic Council chairman, the floating jellyfish-like creature, gestured for calm. High Commander Vex Thor, the challenge was issued and accepted under Council law. The location was of your choosing. Are you claiming the humans cheated? I'm claiming they fought like savages. Jisoo's voice cut through the chamber. We fought like winners. There's a difference. Vex Thor turned on her. You had no honor. No respect for the conventions of warfare. Conventions we never signed, Jisoo replied calmly. You chose the battlefield. You chose the terms. You chose to bring 500 ships against our 20. The only thing we chose was to survive, and we're very good at that. A representative from the Howland Confederacy, a species known for strict military traditions, spoke up. Ambassador Jisoo, while technically legal, your tactics were unprecedented. Many species are concerned about what this means for future conflicts. It means you should think very carefully before challenging humanity to a fight, Jisoo said bluntly. We didn't want this war. Commander Vexthor forced it on us because he thought we were weak. He was wrong. Before the debate could continue, an urgent message arrived at the council chamber. The chairman read it, his tentacles twitching in what might have been surprise. The Vrathan High Council has issued a formal declaration. They are mobilizing their full armada, 1,200 warships, to, and, I quote, pacify human space and restore order to the galaxy. The armada will launch within 3 days. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. 1,200 ships. The largest military mobilization in a century. Jisoo felt her stomach drop, but she kept her expression neutral. They'd won the battle, but now they were facing total war. Vexthor smiled, showing his sharp teeth. You won a single engagement through trickery and cowardice. Now you'll face the true power of the Vrathan Empire. Surrender now, and we might allow your species to survive as servants. Or? Jisoo asked. Or we'll teach the entire galaxy what happens to primitive species who forget their place. Back on Moon Base Sejong, the mood was far less confident than it had been before the first battle. Admiral Sujin sat in her office with Counselor Min-ji, a human intelligence officer who just returned from a deep cover mission in Vrathan space. They're not bluffing, Min-ji reported, spreading holographic images across the desk. I confirmed the fleet movement myself. 1,200 warships, and they're not planning to hit military targets. They're going straight for civilian colonies. They want to force a surrender through terror. Sujin studied the images, her face grim. How long do we have? 5 days, maybe 6. If you hit their supply lines, their communication networks, their garrison forces, all at the same time, the Vrathan won't be able to respond. Their empire will fracture. The bird-like Ton representative clicked nervously. You're asking us to gamble our entire civilizations on the hope that humanity can hold out long enough. Yes, Sujin said simply. I am. Because the alternative is living under Vrathan rule forever. They take your resources, station troops in your cities, and treat you like property. When do you fight back? When they've taken everything? When your children have forgotten what freedom looks like? The 7 species exchanged glances across their screens. Finally, the Kalesh spoke again. How long do you need? 72 hours from the moment the Vrathan arrive at Shinseji. 3 days of holding their attention, keeping their fleet committed, making them think they're winning. Can you be ready? One by one, the representatives nodded. It was a desperate plan, insane and dangerous. But it was also the first real hope any of them had felt in decades. After the call ended, Min-ji looked at Sujin with concern. Admiral, how are we going to hold off 1,200 ships for 3 days? The colony at Shinseji has minimal defenses. We're going to give them something the Vrathan have never faced before, Sujin replied. She pulled up another file, this one marked with the highest security clearance. Dr. Youngmi's been working on a project in secret for the past 2 years. Something we couldn't use in the first battle because it needed to stay hidden. The file opened to show schematics of a device that made Min-ji's eyes widen. That's... Admiral, that's a targeted gravity well generator. We've theorized about these, but actually building one. Youngmi built 6 of them. They've never been tested at full scale, but the simulations are promising. We place them in strategic positions around Shinseji. When the Vrathan fleet arrives, we activate them simultaneously. Their formation will collapse, ships will collide, and we'll have a brief window to strike. And, after that window closes? Then, we fight with everything we have, Sujin said quietly. Every ship, every weapon, every tactic we've ever developed. Because if we fail, if we can't hold them for 3 days, then, 7 species are going to be annihilated for trusting us. On the colony world of Shinseji, colonist leader J1 was organizing the evacuation of non-essential personnel. The colony had been built in a valley surrounded by mountains, a beautiful location that was now a tactical nightmare. Captain Day1's ship had just arrived in orbit, and he was meeting with J1 in the colony's main administrative building. "We should evacuate everyone," Day1 said. "Civilians can't be here when the Vrathan arrive." J1 shook his head. "If we evacuate completely, the Vrathan won't commit their full fleet. They'll know it's a trap. We need people here. We need them to think this is a real target worth destroying." "You're talking about using civilians as bait." "I'm talking about volunteers staying behind to save our species," J1 corrected. "I've explained the situation to everyone. 30,000 people have chosen to stay. They know the risks." Day1 wanted to argue, but he knew J1 was right. The Vrathan needed to believe this was a genuine target. They needed to commit their full force. "We'll protect as many as we can," Day1 promised. "The defense plans include civilian shelters deep underground. When the fighting starts, get everyone into those shelters and stay there until it's over. And if it doesn't go according to plan?" Day1 met his eyes. "Then, at least you'll know that humanity went down fighting." As preparations continued across human space, Ambassador Jisoo remained at the Galactic Council, ensuring the observers would be positioned to witness what was coming. She also quietly placed another bet, this time at odds of 1,000,000 to 1 against humanity surviving the coming battle. When questioned about it, she simply smiled. "I like long odds. They pay better." The Vrathan Armada arrived at Shinseji like a storm of steel and fire. 1,200 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, filling the space around the colony world. It was the largest military fleet assembled in living memory, and every ship was focused on one goal, the complete destruction of human resistance. High Commander Vexthor stood on the bridge of the Unbreakable Will, which had been repaired and reinforced after the humiliation at the Scourge Belt. This time, there would be no tricks, no ambushes, no clever human tactics. This time, he had overwhelming force and clear orders: make an example of this colony that the entire galaxy would never forget. "Scan the system," he ordered. "I want to know every ship, every weapon, every piece of debris within 100,000 kilometers." The sensor officer worked his station carefully, having learned hard lessons from the last battle. "Sir, detecting minimal human presence. One escort vessel in orbit, the Defiant Hope. A handful of civilian transports. No sign of the main fleet." Vexthor's eyes narrowed. "They abandoned the colony? Cowards." "Sir, we're detecting life signs on the surface. Approximately 30,000 humans still in the main settlement." "Perfect," Vexthor said coldly. "They'll serve as witnesses to their own destruction. All ships, assume bombardment formation. Target the civilian centers first. I want this broadcast across every human channel." The Vrathan fleet began to move into position, completely unaware that they were settling into carefully calculated coordinates. On the surface, in 6 locations around the colony, Dr. Youngmi's gravity well generators powered up. In the underground command center beneath the colony, Captain Day1 watched the tactical display as the Vrathan fleet moved into perfect position. Colonist leader J1 stood beside him, along with the 30,000 volunteers who had chosen to stay. Every civilian was now in reinforced shelters deep underground, designed to survive orbital bombardment. "They're all in position," Tactical Officer Hyun-woo reported. "Generators are at full power." "Dr. Youngmi," Day1 said into his communicator, "this is your moment. Please tell me these things actually work." From Moon Base Sejong, Youngmi's voice came back confident and slightly amused. "Only one way to find out, Captain. Activating gravity wells in 3, 2, 1, now." The 6 generators activated simultaneously, creating localized gravitational anomalies that shouldn't exist in nature. The carefully coordinated devices generated targeted gravity wells that pulled at the Vrathan formation from multiple directions at once. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Ships that had been in perfect formation suddenly found themselves being pulled off course. Collisions occurred as vessels crashed into each other, shields sparking and failing. The entire formation collapsed into chaos as ships desperately tried to compensate for gravitational forces pulling them in impossible directions. "What's happening?" Vexthor shouted as the Unbreakable will lurched violently to one side. "Report." "Sir, we're experiencing massive gravitational distortions. Multiple sources, origin unknown. Navigation systems can't compensate." Two Vrathan destroyers collided directly in front of Vexthor's flagship, their shields overloading in a brilliant flash. A cruiser spun out of control, its engines firing at maximum trying to escape the gravitational pull. "Emergency maneuvers," Vexthor ordered. "Get us out of this trap." But, before the Vrathan could organize a response, the real ambush began. From behind the colony world's moon, the human fleet emerged. Not 20 ships this time. 42 vessels appeared on sensors, including ships that had been reported destroyed in the first battle. Admiral Sujin had pulled every operational vessel from Earth's defense fleet, every patrol ship from the colonies, every experimental craft that could mount weapons. It still wasn't enough to match the Vrathan numbers, but it didn't need to be. The gravity wells had turned the Vrathan formation into a disorganized mess. "All ships, engage at will," Sujin's voice came over the fleet channel. "Hit them while they're scattered. Focus on the command ships." Captain Daewon's Defiant Hope led the charge, missiles and energy weapons firing at a Vrathan battleship that was spinning helplessly in the gravitational distortion. The battleship's shields were down, its systems overwhelmed trying to compensate for the impossible physics affecting it. The human missiles punched through its hull, causing secondary explosions that rippled across the massive vessel. Lieutenant Taeyong's fighter squadrons, now numbering over 100 craft, swarmed through the chaos like predators. They targeted engines, weapon systems, and communication arrays. Any Vrathan ship that tried to organize a defense found its systems disabled before it could respond. The battle that Vexthor had planned to be a simple bombardment turned into a desperate fight for survival. The Vrathan had superior numbers and firepower, but they couldn't use them effectively while caught in the gravity wells. After 2 hours of brutal combat, Young Mi's voice came over the command channel. "Generators are overheating. We're going to lose them in approximately 30 seconds. All ships, pull back to defensive positions," Sujin ordered immediately. "Prepare for conventional engagement." The gravity wells failed one by one, and the Vrathan fleet finally regained control of their ships. But they'd already lost over 200 vessels to collisions, explosions, and human attacks. Vexthor's bridge was a scene of controlled panic. Officers were trying to restore communications with scattered units, assess damage, and reorganize the fleet. "Sir, we've lost 217 ships. Another 140 are damaged. The humans are regrouping behind the planet." Vexthor's hands gripped his command chair so hard his claws dug into the metal. How do they keep doing this?" His tactical officer, a younger Vrathan who had survived the first battle, spoke quietly. "Sir, I think we need to consider the possibility that we've underestimated this species." "Underestimated?" Vexthor turned on him. "We have 1,000 ships still operational. They have less than 50. We will crush them." But, even as he spoke, reports were coming in from across the Vrathan Empire. The 7 oppressed species had chosen that exact moment to launch their coordinated uprisings. Garrison forces were under attack. Supply lines were being severed. Communication networks were being sabotaged. The Vrathan High Council was sending urgent messages demanding that the Armada return immediately to deal with the rebellions. But Vexthor refused to retreat. Not again. Not after suffering another humiliating setback. For the next 70 hours, the battle raged around Shinseji. The humans fought with desperate determination, using every trick, every tactic, every weapon they had. They lost ships. They lost people. But, they held the line. The human vessels that had been reported destroyed in the first battle, they'd been damaged and, secretly repaired, hidden away for this exact moment. The experimental weapons, deployed without full testing, some working brilliantly and, others failing catastrophically. The tactical innovations, developed over 3 sleepless days by officers who refused to accept defeat. On the third day, as the Vrathan prepared for what Vexthor swore would be the final assault, new reports arrived. The rebellions across the Empire had succeeded. 7 species had declared independence. Vrathan garrison forces were surrendering or being destroyed. The Empire's iron grip was shattering. The Vrathan High Council issued a direct order: return immediately. The Empire itself was at risk. Vexthor stared at the order for a long moment, his hands shaking with rage and humiliation. Then, he looked at the tactical display showing the battered but still fighting human fleet. Sound the retreat, he said quietly. As the Vrathan fleet withdrew, they left behind 412 destroyed warships and thousands of dead. The human fleet had lost 19 vessels, with another 23 damaged but operational. In the underground shelters, the 30,000 colonists who had volunteered to stay cheered and cried and held each other. They'd survived. Their gamble had paid off. Captain Day One's defiant hope was barely functional, held together by emergency repairs and the determination of its crew. But it was still there, still fighting, still refusing to give up. 3 months later, the Galactic Council convened again. The Vrathan Empire had fractured into independent systems. 7 species were celebrating their freedom. And humanity had earned a reputation that would last for generations. Ambassador Jisoo stood before the council once more. This time, when she spoke, everyone listened. We didn't want this war, she said. We wanted to be left alone to build our colonies and raise our children in peace. But, when you force humans to fight, when you threaten our families and our homes, you should remember one thing. We've been fighting since before we had fire. We've survived everything our own planet could throw at us, and we survived each other for 10,000 years. We learned lessons in those wars that most species have never needed to learn. She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives. We learned that there's no such thing as fighting fair when your children's lives are at stake. We learned that desperation breeds innovation. We learned that the side with the bigger guns doesn't always win. And, most importantly, we learned that you should never, ever give up. As she walked out of the chamber, alien species stepped aside. Some in fear. Some in respect. All of them understanding that humanity was not a species to be challenged lightly. The broadcast that Vexthor had intended to show human weakness instead became a lesson that spread across the galaxy. The footage of the battles, the tactical innovations, the sheer stubborn refusal to surrender, all of it was studied by military academies across hundreds of worlds. On Earth, Admiral Sujin received her promotion and a request to establish a permanent training program to teach other species humanity's approach to warfare. She accepted, with one condition, that it include mandatory courses on the costs of war and the importance of exhausting diplomatic options first. Captain Day One finally got his vacation, though it was interrupted 3 times by requests for interviews about the battle. Eventually he just turned off his communicator and spent a month fishing in the mountains. And, on the colony of Shinseji, they built a memorial to the 19 ships and 4,000 humans who had died defending their world. The inscription was simple: they challenged the most lethal civilization among the cosmos. This is what happened. Across the galaxy, aggressive empires took note. Some learned the lesson. Others would need to learn it the hard way. Humanity, for their part, went back to building their colonies and raising their children. But, now, when they looked up at the stars, they did so with the quiet confidence of a species that had proven itself against impossible odds. And, somewhere in deep space, another empire was making threats toward human borders. Admiral Su-Jin read the intelligence report, sighed, and began drafting battle plans. "Here we go again," she muttered, but there was a small smile on her face. After all, humanity was very good at teaching lessons to those who refused to learn.